and welcome to this latest episode of Chasing Creativity. I'm Kiran Manral, your host. Today, my guest is Shweta Kaushik, an interior and product designer. Chances are some of your favorite restaurants, bars, and lounges have been designed by her. Welcome to Chasing Creativity, Shweta.
Thank you so much for having me, Kiran.
It's such a pleasure to meet you after so many years and to chat with you again. And you've been doing such stellar work over the years. And I was most delighted to realize that some of my favorite places have been done by you, Shweta.
That's really nice to hear, actually. Like, it's always lovely to hear that when people say that.
Tell us, how did design happen to you in your childhood? You come from a family of surgeons and medical people. So how did interior design happen to this girl?
You know, it's an interesting story, actually. When I was growing up, I of course grew up in a household of surgeons, and my grandfather was a very famous one. He was the father of hand surgery in India. So we always had people from around the world coming in and, working with him, studying under him. He also trained my father. And it was kind of a given that I would also become a doctor. So there was this one point where I remember that I just said, I don't know if I can walk in these shoes, like can I follow in their footsteps? Like, will I be good? Will I not be? Like, what if I'm horrible? And then kind of just like be in their shadow. And I don't think I was quite prepared to know if I was good or not to be in medicine. So there was a point where I think I told my parents I want to be in something creative. And it was quite interesting because my mom turned around and said that, you can be creative in any field, right? You can be creative in medicine. Like, look at your grandfather who innovated and came up with something like a super creative solution to a situation that, which had very traditional ways of doing stuff. So, but at the same time, I was like, I know that's not how I'm thinking. And there was this one moment that I remember where we went to someone's house. There was this moment where the fifth year student was doing this. She was making this beautiful house. Like, she was like, it was an elevation. It was a big drawing, and I think she was shading in some stone and like some roofing tile. And I'm just watching her. And there was a point where I actually offered a thought. Like, I offered some sort of like saying like, what if you did this? And she must have looked at me, this 10-year-old girl, just kind of being like, who are you? Like, why are you here? And like, why are you telling me what to do? Like, you don't know anything about this. But I feel like what was interesting was the confidence that I had to be able to tell someone who was doing something in their field that, maybe we could do this. Like, what if we did this? I was suddenly part of it. And I think that was a very interesting moment because I don't know where that came from. And so that was definitely, I think, that moment where I figured maybe this is something, but it also kind of went under the radar because I was 10 years old, right? Like, so it's not something that recurred or played. I think the other point where it kind of came back in was when I did an aptitude test in my 10th grade. The school made us do an aptitude test because we all had to decide where do we go, right? From here, like, it's like the whole world is open to you. Where do you go? And I think the two things that came out of that was advertising and architecture.
Okay.
So again, that reinforced the fact that there was a creative streak and creative in these kind of fields. And it was only 2 years later, because it was still on the path of like, I had to be a doctor. So did science, did all of that, struggled with, like, there was that moment when it was like, again, you at your 12th standard, you are at that precipice where you're like, now what? Right? So I did my 2 years of science. Now what? And it was, again, it was just absolutely decided that, yes, you will do medicine. And so my dad went and got all those big books. I had to, it was prepare for the AIMS exam, prepare for the Maharashtra board exam, prepare for the Delhi board exam, prepare for this exam. And I remember finishing those 2 years and then looking at that stack of books and going like, no, this is not what I want to do. So it was quite interesting because I rebelled completely against it and I just wouldn't wake up and go for the exams. Like I would like oversleep. I would pretend not to like hear them. And like I would do these ridiculous things. And at one point, my father just got really upset and he said, if you don't want to do this, then what do you want to do? And I said, architecture. And they looked at me, like my parents looked at me like I was crazy. And my dad's answer was, people who can't get into engineering and medicine do architecture.
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, but what about the people who choose it? You know, it's not about just getting into it because you couldn't get into a different thing, but you also choose it. So that was my foray into it and kind of choosing that design is what I kind of want to be in.
What kind of resistance did you face from the family?
I think for them, it was, they didn't know any other way.
Uh-huh.
It was, this is what they knew. And this is what they were told, that you had to, if you wanted to be successful, then you had to be a doctor and an engineer. And it was the height of everything. So I think initially, I think my mom was very supportive. Dad took some time to come around. I think for them, it was, can you be successful? Like the idea was that, will you be successful? And when you're growing up in a family where everyone is successful at some level, like in their fields, I think that was the question mark, right? It's like, can you be successful in what you're doing? And so I think that was a driving force for me because I was like, if I'm choosing this, then I will show you I can be successful in this.
You aced your exam. Where did you join and how did your education in architecture continue? And when did you decide to narrow down to interiors?
So so at that point, it was centralized admissions.
Okay.
So you had your marks for your examination and then they took your PCM marks, physics, chemistry, and maths. And like I said, it wasn't that great. So when my marks were put together, I think I got a rank of some 536 or something like that. And with the centralized examinations, what happens is either if you can pay, then you can get into you have paid seats, of course, and then you can pay and get into it. That was not an option for me because my dad didn't want me to, wasn't supportive at that point in time. So he said, I'm not going to pay. So if you choose to do this, you will have to get in on your own. So the school which I got was in Navi Mumbai. And at one point, my mom's friend suggested that, why not do interior design? And that kind of came from the fact that my mom, God bless her, she really, really was helping me, really sort this out. She would take me to architecture colleges where we would talk to the students because we didn't know anything about it. And I think it was interesting because when you spoke to the first couple of years, they're all excited and they're like, oh yeah, we're doing architecture. By the time you hit the third year, they're like, okay, this is tough. And by the time you talk to the fifth year students, they're just like, this is a really long course. People drop out. Not everyone can do it. It really does test your patience on many, many different fronts. And they were like, if you don't want to do architecture and if you want to do interior design, then don't do this course because it's too long for you to put in that effort and then come out at the other end only to do interiors. So they said, if that's your goal, then just do interior design.
Okay.
And the interior design course is 3 years. So it's like a big difference in terms of that, right? So you're out in the world earning way before an architecture student is. And I kept thinking that no, I want to do architecture. But because of my ranking, I didn't get admission in the schools I wanted to. So I had to wait. So I was waitlisted. I chose my schools, I waitlisted. And in the meantime, my mom said, why don't we try this interior design school that my mom's friend recommended? And I also had an examination, which I aced again. And I was like, okay, fine. Maybe I'll just do this till I get my chance to kind of figure out what school it was. But I was already 2 months in and I really did enjoy the classes, made friends. And at the end of it, I was like, you know what? It can't be that bad to just do interior design.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, let's just stick with this. And so I just kind of stuck with it.
I'm very glad you did.
Yeah, I kind of really glad I did because it was a very, I think I made some amazing friends who've been friends for life. It was a very intensive and it was a very good course actually. And so I remember graduating, and there were design firms that would only they would pick people from our school because they were like, you guys know what is needed. We were prepped and we were taught by architects. So it wasn't just academics, but it was actual architects who would leave their profession for like 1 or 2 hours in a week, or 2 hours, like 3 hours in a week, to come and teach us. So they really prepped us for what would be our role in the in the design community versus just teaching us about different things, and kind of keeping it very almost surrealistic versus realistic.
Talking of surrealistic versus realistic, what would you say is your personal design philosophy?
So I think I've struggled with that to kind of figure out what that could be, because that's a question I get asked quite a lot. What's your style? What's your design philosophy? Like, that comes a lot. But I think for me, it truly comes from how can I make a person feel a certain way? And everything else ties back into that. So I wouldn't say that, oh, my style or my philosophy is, like, it's not a movement. It's not a thing in, it's not a, how do I say this? It's not something that's so visceral, I guess. Yeah, like tangible rather, but it is very visceral in that moment. It's actually, it just, how can I make you feel a certain way?
So you seek to draw an emotion from whoever is inhabiting the space that you've designed at that point.
Like, do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? Do you feel excited? Do you feel like whatever? It's just making you feel a certain way, and I think that's where I kind of my philosophy lies.
And I can vouch for that. Having visited some places that you've designed, you really do feel comfortable and at home and not intimidated by the space. But yet they're very elegant and they're done very well. So I think you've aced that too.
Thank you so much.
For someone who's curious about interior design as a profession, what is your process like? How does it begin from the brief onwards?
So the idea is to try and figure out what the end goal is. So say if someone comes to me and says, I want someone to come here and celebrate, to be able to celebrate their life, or like celebrate a moment, then you kind of figure out how do you kind of do that from that perspective. What is the kind of food that they're serving? What is is it supposed to be a place where you can come without thinking? Like, wherever I am in the city, if I feel like, oh, I'm craving this food, I want to go here, I should be able to either go there, or is it a place that you book because you want to go and experience a moment? That means it's celebratory in a way, versus something where you can just say, okay, fine, I'm craving this, let's go right now. And you don't feel, it's not a pretentious space where you will be turned away if you don't have closed shoes, or if you don't have, if you're not wearing full pants. Like, there are places like that, but it depends. So every place is different, and you try to understand what is the thought process behind it, and then you, again, like I said, like the idea is saying, if that's what you want them to feel, how do I make design choices that lead to that? So how comfortable are the seats? How long do you want them to sit? How close are the seats? Are my tables more private, or do I feel like I'm part of something else? So you constantly try to like make those decisions based on, again, how you want that person to feel when they come into your space.
Okay. And designing for places which are going to be public spaces in a way, there is style, of course, which is very important. There's also functionality, which is even more important. How do you manage to bring about this marriage without sacrificing on either?
We work very hard on that, to be very honest. It's so we work very closely with the operations team, and I think that's that we have to remember that one of the pillars of enjoying a night out is service, and we also play a role in helping to make sure that the service is good and seamless. You don't want to place a side station where, you turn your head and you see the waiter's bum, for instance. You don't want to. You want to make sure that the food from the kitchen reaches your table hot, right? You want to make sure that the waiters have a place to kind of like step back into. So there is a lot of that, and we work very closely with the operations team to say what are your requirements, and I call them the silent client essentially, because
Okay.
it's what you see is one layer, but they are the ones that are making the place run. We need to make sure that we hit that point, but at the same time, here are my concerns. I don't want it to be a a, a like a like a sore thumb sticking out, because it will. So how can I do something where it still looks beautiful and elegant, but it's right there for people to see, and can we make it look interesting? Which is, I think, something we did with Beirut, Pawai,
Okay.
where we had to have the side station bang in the middle of the wall, and so I created these arches around it, gave it shells on top, so it almost looked like a little nook
Okay.
that was right there. So it's right there. It's in between your seating.
I haven't
but
noticed it. So you've done a good job.
there you go. That's the whole point. It's like, can it be there without you knowing that it's there?
Lovely. Now, designing for a restaurant, designing for a public space, designing any interiors for the matter. I mean, as a writer, I write for myself, and it's only the editor who sees it. But when you're designing for a client, you have to keep their temperament in mind more than your own. So how does that affect your creativity?
So I think the beautiful thing with designing for public spaces is we're designing for everyone. So I feel like my what I personally might feel kind of gets put aside. What the client might personally feel also gets put aside.
Okay.
It's considered, but it's not the driving force. I have the confidence to be able to tell the client that, okay, sure, but this is what you feel, but this is what's actually going to happen. Because as someone who also likes going out, I'm an observer of people. I watch how people react in certain things, and I'm like, you may think that they will do this, but this is how they will react to this. And it's a beautiful mix of, it's not just about design, but it's also understanding human nature. It's also understanding how, so it's behavioral analysis. It is like trying to like preempt how they might behave in that space, and why they would. It's that everything has to have a reasoning. And I have that confidence now to be able to sit with a client and say that this is why I think you should do this, while you may feel this. We'll put in certain elements of it. We're not disregarding it. I get the point. But I do believe that this is how things will kind of go. So I think when you're designing for public spaces, there is a certain generalization that you have to do, but it comes with thought process and reasons why you want to do it.
Interesting. Now, India has become, at least in the urban centers, quite a culture of eating out. We've developed it over the past few years. And also, I think travel has expanded that, and in terms of expectations of what you want from a space you're going to. You've seen world-class restaurants everywhere, and you've eaten there. And when you come back here, then you want that same ambience, and you want the same kind of feel and mood to it. How do you keep inspiring yourself? Do you travel a lot? Do you look at spaces internationally? How do you feed your own creativity?
It's through everything, actually. I think as a creative person, you have to be a sponge. Travel, of course. Travel, I think, reading, picking up books, blogs, Instagram, of course, like following people on Instagram. There are a lot of blogs and a lot of like websites that consolidate a lot of design magazines. You do have to constantly see stuff, but sometimes I get inspired by the most random things, like someone just walking on like walking through some great hall, and I notice the flooring pattern, and I'm like, damn, that's a really cool flooring pattern. And and I really wish I could, like, half the time I'm just like constantly taking pictures, because you can't do screenshots with any of this. So I'm just like, wait, go back and like take a picture of that. So it is quite interesting, because you just get inspired by the most random things. I'll just suddenly see something and I'll be like, oh yeah, that kind of ties back to that.
So do you maintain kind of a mood book or something, inspiration book, or?
I actually keep writing notes and I do sketch a lot. So I don't have it today, but I normally have my iPad and my thing with it. And it's like constant. Every time I have a thought, I'm just like scribbling it down, make one sketch and just kind of keep it. I don't look at it very often, but I feel like that head to like mind to hand thing where you put it down, it somehow kind of cements, it kind of gets locked away in my head somewhere. I don't think of it very often, but it will come back to me in a moment of like I'll be ruminating over some concept and it'll just suddenly like pop up in my head. So it's like a little filing system which I have in my head where it's just like suddenly it'll be like, oh, that works.
So if you're taking notes when you're listening to this, please remember, put it down when you see it or think of it. That's very important. What have been your favorite projects to work on?
Oh, that's a tough one because how do you choose?
How do you choose? Ek maa ke kitne bacche hai?
Exactly. It's actually a little thing which I feel like I do feel like every project's my baby. It's like, and I feel like a surrogate mother because it's like you have to give your baby away like every time.
I can imagine.
It's like I finish a project and it's like, it's my baby, but now it's not mine anymore. It's yours. Please do as you will.
Chaho Simran ji le apni zindagi.
Yeah, and it's like you go back as a proud mother. You sit there and you be like, yeah, okay, fine. You guys are doing fine. But I think different projects are interesting to me for different reasons. Bayroute was very exciting for me because it was just allowed me to play with it. I built mood boards for 5 years doing these 5 Bayroutes. Like, just constantly just being like, okay, today I'm inspired a bit by Turkey. I'm inspired a bit by, say, a Riyadh in Morocco, or I'm inspired by something else. And so that allows me to also escape and travel, right? Like it's like you are just suddenly imagining a different world and like what that would be like. And you try to sort of recreate that here. And it was interesting for me because I went to Morocco 5 years after.
Oh.
Like it was crazy. It was a trip that was planned by someone else. And to see those places that have been on my mood board was such a lovely experience. Like I was just looking like, you have been sitting on this mood board for 5 years and now I finally get to see this. It was quite an interesting experience. And then we never did any more Bayroutes after that, unfortunately. But,
alas and alack.
Yeah, but it was good. It was good to be able to see that, yes, I was able to recreate that. I think Woodside Inn is one of my favorite places because I think it's also a place that I go to.
Mm-hmm.
So Woodside Inn in Andheri, I stay in Andheri, is literally like on my backyard. Like it's my neighborhood bar. And been going there for 15 years now. And it's just to be able to do that, I think for them to have the trust in me, like I call them legacy brands. Like legacy brands are brands that have existed for a long period of time. And there are loyalists. There are people who actually like kind of going to these places. So you almost are a custodian of their thought and vision. So when you do a new place, you don't want to depart from that. You need the familiarity because you also go there for that. So I think it was almost like designing my neighborhood bar.
Nice.
Like it was for me. So I think it was very close to my heart from that perspective. Yeah.
Woodside Inn and Bayroute.
I'm sure there are more, but these are the ones that just pop into my head right now.
Do you use any technology in your design process? And what do you think of AI and design?
I think it's like, I think there is a lot that can be done with technology. It's visual, right? Like you want to be able to have your thoughts and ideas. So we anyway do, say, for example, walkthroughs, right? Or 3D views and things like that. That already exists. Now you can sort of step into that world that you create. So imagine doing a walkthrough where you are walking through the space. So that's kind of cool. I haven't done it yet, but I do want to do it for a project eventually. I have used Midjourney to create certain images for a pitch because it had to be a quick pitch and I had a certain idea and I felt that it could be quite powerful to have an image that showcases what I'm thinking versus just reference pictures, right? And everyone can create a Pinterest board. That's very easy to do. I have clients who make me a Pinterest board and send it to me, and say that this is what we want, But half the time, like, and there are times when I will do something, I have a thought process, and I'll just kind of sketch it out or create, like we end up creating quick like we use SketchUp a lot. So we use SketchUp on a daily, like a quick thing, because it's quick to do it, and then we can render it super quickly versus 3D Max. But we do that. But sometimes when you're just trying to imagine something and you don't have the time, I think it's been a great tool to play with. Yeah, the first time I sat on Midjourney, I think I spent 8 hours. I didn't sleep all night.
Wow,
like,
8 hours.
I started doing that at about 10 o'clock at night as a little like, oh, I'm bored. Let me try and do something. Like, what if I use these prompts and like for this pitch, and the next thing I know, it was like 8 hours later. And I'm
wow.
Yeah, it's quite
that immersive.
It's very immersive because it's addictive then, right? You start to see what you're imagining and you're like, oh, no, that's not correct. And you try to fix the prompts. So that was quite an interesting experience.
Quite interesting and quite scary also in some way. Yeah.
There is, I think, with AI, we don't know where it can go. There's so much, like I watch Black Mirror. I don't know if you're a big, I'm a big fan of Black Mirror. I think it's amazing, and what I love about it, or like I'm scared about it, is that it's the near future. It's not some dystopian.
It's not even the near future, Shweta. It's here. It's now.
Yeah. So there's so much of it that I would watch Black Mirror, and then like 2 months later, there'll be a little news article that says, oh, this person tried this and this is like the thing. And you're like, wait, that was the episode, So it's there. It's right here. You're right. It's right there. And it'll be interesting to see how humans adapt to that.
And how us creative people survive it. Yes. How do you think interior designers can get sustainability into their projects?
That is something that is a constant conversation. For us, sustainability can be done in many ways. We need materials that are sustainable, that are built sustainably. There is like one thought process is everything should be natural, but that's great in certain architectural elements. Like there are a lot of architectural firms now that do very sustainable, like bio architecture and stuff like that. But that's, again, it can work in certain areas. In a city like Bombay, I think where we get stuck is that we don't have enough products that help us. It's a constant conversation where like I'm on a group of like interior designers who constantly ask this question, like, are there sustainable polish brands? Are there sustainable paint brands, etc., etc.? But they don't, not to that extent, like where you can completely say sustainability. I think the way you can do it is work locally. I think that's a great way to start to be sustainable in a way, I think, where reusing old things, upcycling, like maybe not throw out your old furniture and make new ones, but can you retain it, and can you change it? Can you kind of move around with it and have the ability to bring it back also? Like if you have a chair, maybe play with the color, strip it down, like play with the upholstery, things like that. But I think it is important to think that way. I think everyone needs to move into a thing. And I wish brands kind of came up with more sustainable solutions. We see conversations about it, but they're not mainstream. There is a company that so they basically create, take the pollution out of the air and create an ink. Right? So you're kind of harnessing the pollution, the carbon from the air, and they make it into an ink. And that ink can be now be repurposed into different things. And there's a company that's making cement tiles with it. So it's only black and white, varying shades of black to white, grays in between, because it's only that. And I think it's interesting, but I feel, again, it's not that widespreadly available. And then you get stuck as a designer, then you get stuck with just a black and white situation. It's fine. I think everyone's trying. And I think you need more of this for for everyone to kind of do it. And they're beautiful tiles, actually. They're really nice. So I think giving people like this a chance and saying that we will buy and we will do this because it means that you can produce more. And if you are producing more, that means someone else might think of also producing more. So it's kind of like a little give and take with all of it. Yeah.
What would you say are the big design trends that are coming now?
I think everyone still wants to feel that you're connected to the earth. Mm-hmm. So that sort of homeliness, that naturalness. Like, I think if you see the trends in terms of color right now, it's all very earthy. Mm-hmm. It's like you think mud, like you think earth, mud, like from the sea, like things like that. So greenery, like green's one of my favorite colors. I have this little thing which says like, it's not a skid project if there's no green in it. Green is there somewhere, like it'll be there in the project. Because I do feel like our neutrals have changed. Our neutral used to be gray way back when. And now you start to see neutrals more like greens, browns, like salmons, things like that. Things that are comfortable. That's very much in trend. Like not just having something that looks pretty, but something that you can sort of enjoy, sink into, doesn't hurt you, rounded. Mm-hmm. Like I've noticed that there's a lot more organicness that is sort of coming into all your product design right now as well, like furniture, chairs, tables, even vases and stuff like that. It's all much more organic. So I do think that we are trying to get connected back to the earth.
Okay, that's lovely. And I'll keep an eye out for that whenever I visit places and see whether... I think your projects do have a preponderance of green and salmon. And I've noticed that Bayroute is there. Tresind also, I think.
Yeah, Tresind has blue and green, yeah.
Blue and green.
Blue mostly, but yeah.
Yeah. And the Bayroutes have salmon and Woodside has green and browns. Yes.
Yeah.
Bang on.
Yeah, name a skid project that's green in there somewhere.
Finally, Shweta, what is your dream project? What is one project you'd love to do and you haven't been able to do yet?
I would love to do a whole hotel. Like, I think a whole hotel right from... I have worked on one when I was working with a design firm. I did have the chance to lead a project like that. But it would be great to have it under the skid banner. Like, I can do everything. I can do restaurants. I can do a spa. Spa is something which I haven't done and I would love to do. So yeah, it would be everything. It would be like rooms and it'd be like restaurants, a spa, all of it.
From your lips to God's ears. So hoping you'll get a restaurant, spa and an entire hotel project sometime this year. Thanks so much, Shweta, for taking time out for this.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
And with that, this is a wrap on this latest episode of Chasing Creativity. We were chatting with the fabulous Shweta Kaushik. This is Kiran Manral signing out. Do follow me on my social media at Kiran Manral everywhere and subscribe to this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Bingepods, and wherever you get your dose of audio content. See you next week.